Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Dan Wetzel. Dan puts us in the courtrooms as he recalls covering the trials of Aaron Hernandez and Larry Nassar. And then outside of the college realm, you're covering something like Aaron Hernandez. And the idea that you are willing to go into the courtroom day after day after day, you just don't see a lot of that in sports media. And for a guy like Hernandez, you were there every day pretty much, right?
Two trials, yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, I'd work with the lawyers and be like, they clue you in when somebody like, look, can you text me if we're getting a good guy tomorrow morning? I can fly in, but I can't be sitting here for 3 days doing cell phone. Like when they're doing we need to use the cell phone. You ever watch Dateline? Like cell phone technology shows the guy was in the neighborhood. That takes days to go through. It's the boringest. And then this tower pinged for 14 seconds. And then this tower, it's the worst. I'm like, I can't be here for that. But if you're going to have, we're bringing in this guy. So, yeah, I was there for a great deal of it.
So on that day in April of 2015, when the jury convicted Hernandez, the former New England tight end, the New England Patriots, of murder of Odin Lloyd, what was it like in that courtroom?
That was I will say the most dramatic things I've ever been involved with are verdicts at murder trials. I've covered a few murder trials, and when they bring the jury in, foreman reads the thing, it is, I mean, it's incredible, right? You have unbelievable anguish and emotion in the room. Someone's been murdered. You have a family desperate for a yes, or guilty. You have another family desperate for a not guilty. Sometimes it's closer than you think. There's so much pain because you can sit there and say, this guy's a murderer. I hope he goes away for life, and that's fine. He should, but he still has a mother or a brother or a friend. It's it's painful. It's unbelievably painful for them. And then you have the victims' families that just unbelievably. So the drama of that moment and the pain in those courtrooms is always just almost unbelievable. Even if you have no connection, and generally you've sat through so much, you've gotten to know these people. One thing about covering a trial is very few people go to them. So if you're there for a week or let alone weeks, they have we're going to take a 20-minute recess. Everyone steps outside. There's no one to talk to except the other people. So you tend to get to meet everybody, at least in some manner. Not everyone wants to talk or whatever, but it's just small talk, right? See the game last night, or it was snowing on the way in. Did you make it all right? So you kind of have these connections with a lot of different people, and so that was amazing. I remember the woman who delivered that one. She was very small. She was I don't know. She's in the jury box, but maybe 5 feet tall. I'm going to guess 40. I think she was like an operations manager at, some manufacturing company, right? Anonymous, but this incredibly well organized. And you see the jury, but they never speak. So you try to figure out who the jurors are. And this is the last thing I thought this woman would I was like, wow, they voted her the foreman. Interesting, right? Or foreperson. And she stood up there and delivered that guilty. And it was amazing because they made him immediately sit down if you're watching the video, because you're innocent till proven guilty. But once you're guilty, have a seat. They lock you up. You're no longer, because in the courtroom he's supposed to be, he's in a suit. He's allowed to walk around, all that. He's innocent. But granted, there's a lot of cards. It was amazing drama, and that woman. I always thought that was the first person to ever really hold Aaron Hernandez accountable for his actions in his life. He'd always been able to skate by on everything he ever did, either through his personality, his intelligence, or his football gifts. And then here was this woman just saying, "You're out," flattened him. Wow. And then the wailing of crying from both sides. It's just awful. Those things are just awful. Nassar was the worst, though. Nassar was the worst courtroom I've ever been in. I mean, he was guilty, pled guilty, 10 counts, and he already was going in for child porn. So he spared the trial. His judge, Rosemarie Aquilina, incredible woman. And so she says, what we're going to do is any victim who wants to speak at the sentencing can speak. And if it takes weeks, we're going to do weeks. Anybody can show up. They can talk for as long as they want. They can talk for as little as they want. So he had so many victims. And these women are...
all these former gymnasts.
Many gymnasts
one by one
or athletes of some sort, one after another. These young women now who were girls, and honestly, at least 3, 4, 5 times a day, you just choke up and want to cry, if not cry. I mean, the stories were horrible, and you're like, I think in the end there were 170, but at one point there were going to be 88, and then they started inspiring the others. Everyone remembers Allie Raceman. She wasn't even going to do it. But the stories we were writing out of the thing and the video that was coming out inspired the others to start coming forward. So they had 88. They ended up with like 170 or something. And every one of them deserved their own column. Right? But there's like 20 a day. And you're like, I can't write. I mean, just can't do it. But the stories were so awful. That was the worst. But then there was like this empowering part to it. And this release almost that in some ways was better than, I don't know, a crazy scene. Crazy.
You're also in there as a father.
Oh, yeah.
You have your own kids. So what was the worst moment for you sitting there watching that?
Well, I was talking to this one woman and her daughter. This was after. And the girl was had hurt her hip. And I don't even know if it was gymnastics, but whatever it was the hip. And she was from the Detroit area. And the girl was 11. And she got a recommendation. And they said, hey, I can get you in with Larry Nassar up in Lansing. He's the Olympic gymnastics doctor. So like a good parent. Wow, that's incredible. This would be right. I mean, who wouldn't take that? Okay. We got literally the best of the best. Like, that's crazy. And she drove her up, and Nassar rapes her right in front of the woman. She doesn't even know what's going on. He's so, like, they're all in the room. But she said to me, the girl was so, she goes, well, I go, how old was she at the time? He says, well, I think she was 11 or something. And she goes, she still sat in the back seat. And I remember thinking as a parent, just like, oh my God, like, she's not old enough to sit in the front seat, Wow. And I think I just started, like, the emotion, she was fine, but it was like, it's very rare when you're the one trying to keep it together, right, in an interview, but you're just like, oh my God, like, and the girl was sitting there, girl's done, there was a long stretch where she had, they didn't know what was wrong, suicide, like, they couldn't leave her alone, all knives out of the house, all drugs locked up, all medication locked up, literally tortured their life for 6 years before she finally admitted what had gone down. And she was doing much better. But, that whole scene. And then imagine, like, your whole family's entire family suffered because they all had to spend their time trying, like, why is my 12-year-old trying to kill herself? And no one could figure it out. So, awful stuff. Anyway, it's an uplifting. But important.
Well, I think it's very important because I think what it shows, again, is we think of sports as just, it's entertainment. And it is. But it also reflects life. And if you're really going to be the type of columnist that you are, what sets you apart is that you're willing to go there. You're willing to go there in person. You're willing to go there, work sources, develop relationships, do the shoe leather reporting that I don't care if it was back in the print days or if it's now in the digital era. You got to go there. You got to do the reporting, and you got to put some type of perspective into this that others aren't willing to do. And I think that's
or they're not allowed, right? I mean, I don't know. But one thing about that kind of a story, I remember I did a long podcast with Jim Rome. I did a number of Jim Rome, a lot of radio off of Nassar, which was good because, like, you're reaching the audience And I used to say this line. I'm like, look, when you get together with your friends, and if you're a dad, you don't sit around and go, hey, hear about that child molestation. It's not really a discussion that comes up when you're having beers at watching Monday Night Football. But as every dad and every parent wants to protect their kids, so to bring those kind of conversations into an audience that isn't normally going to hear it,
right,
is particularly huge, because you just don't know. I mean, every parent, it's just one little thing. Like, you know what? I'm gonna keep an eye on my kid today a little bit more. One mistake that other parents made, if I don't even want to call them mistakes, one opportunity that, you know, some guy like Nassar seized. Can you close that up? I covered this high school football rape trial in Steubenville, Ohio.
Yeah, 2013, Steubenville, Ohio, the hometown
Dean
of
Martin.
Martin.
Yep, and terrible story, but a very interesting one, because these were. I am making no sympathetic judgment on the boys. They all deserve to be guilty, and they actually deserve more punishment than they probably got. But Nassar was setting out every day to rape somebody. These guys weren't. They just did. And it's no less horrific. But I would write the stories, and you could see the mistakes the guys were making. And I remember this high school football coach in Pennsylvania wrote to me and said, I'm making my team read every one of these columns. Right. Because it's like, look, this can happen. Right. And you don't want to be this. And it was like, you know what, that's great stuff, right? That's when you feel good. Because again, I'm not excusing it at all, but it's a different level of criminal.
Right.
A 16-year-old kid acting completely wrong is one thing. And then a serial child. Everyone sit there and go, I'm not going to be Larry Nassar. How the hell would you be that awful? But there's way more date rapes than sinister Olympic gymnastics coaches hanging around. So,
right. Well, I think the Steubenville story was, again, another example of, there weren't a lot of media people doing that, in Steubenville. I think Juliet McCurr was there for the New York Times, a few others maybe, but you were there. You were there getting the word from the scene itself, and you're not just sitting on your couch at home.
You got to have you got to have bosses committed to it. And one thing about trials, they usually pay off, and it's incredible readership. But there are days when, nothing happens, and you got to kind of find a story. But so we've always done that. But we've always gotten, true crime is obviously a huge thing. So we've always gotten terrific readership on that. And but like Hernandez was weird. Like there was very few. The coverage was not enormous, especially the second one. And it was kind of wild that. And yeah, you don't get many sports writers there, but I think that sports editors just not. I don't know. I mean, to think that there was an interest in Aaron Hernandez is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy when you think about it, right? But I think what it is also a reflection of, again, it's sports, it's games, it's wins and losses. But no, it's.
Or your sports writer can't handle it, but maybe they can.
Yeah.
We'll just have the court reporter handle it, or we won't bother with it. That guy's gone, and it's like, no, this is, trust the sports writer. They're good at telling stories. I mean, there's so many talented sports writers who go to a game and turn a 3-2 baseball game or a 6-1 baseball game into something worth readable. Give them a chance.